Hi, everybody. Trey Holiday here. I am just a great lineup that I've been able to get with today. And I get to speak to Joseph Todd, another community member out there in Renton who is running for city council on a real progressive platform. Joseph, thanks so much for being with me today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to this space.
Yeah, you have been really integral in shining a light on how things are playing out there in Renton. You and Carmen together, honestly, I've been able to be around both of you guys in different spaces. And this is, to me, what I think these races are all about. It's about bringing your lived experience to the forefront. Joseph, tell folks a little bit about yourself so we can understand what qualifies you to be running, why you're doing it.
So I'm originally from Mobile, Alabama. My dad was a part of SNCC, March of Dr. King. And so I was raised in a family that, took injustice on from the beginning, right? From the forefront, just really pushing and engaging communities. And so as I moved out here to the Northwest, I worked for the Boeing company. I was a senior leader there. I was a senior leader at Alaska Airlines. And then I was the chief information officer for the city of Tukwila. And now I'm currently the deputy chief technology officer for King County. And so those experiences in public service, I know the nuts and bolts of how to get things done. And I have a progressive platform because I know that marginalized and vulnerable communities aren't being listened to in the city of Renton. A friend of mine and I, we actually started a group called Renton Residents for Change. And one of the things that we were doing was trying to teach community members how to engage council in letter writing and talking to council during council meetings, those types of things, right? And during these discussions, I just saw where the city was not listening. I remember in one case in point, we were actually talking about Equity and Social Justice Commission that is really important about making sure you're listening to these community members in marginalized, vulnerable communities when you're making city policy. Silence after the community talked about it. But then a guy came on right after us and started talking to the council about how can I get a gun license during the pandemic? Because I hadn't been able to get one. They snapped right to it and started talking to him about how they can help him. Hey, come in tomorrow, we'll get that taken care of. But when it's talking about equity and social justice, blind eye, don't even want to have a conversation about it.
Wow. So you see a gap and you go, wait a minute, this cannot continue in the city that I live in. That to me is really what I love learning about folks who are running right now. We have a wide gambit of people who are saying, my lived experience is what lets me know that I need to be doing something to champion these causes. How have you been dealing with the campaign trail? I mean, this is your first time running, right? And so how is it for you in terms of a lot of the different ways that politics kind of wields and kind of digs into your personal life? How are you dealing with all that?
So one of the key reasons why I went into this is I really want to work within the institutions to break down racist structures, right? Because often Blacks, BIPOC folks don't have a seat at the table. And without a seat at the table, you can't make any change happen. And so, as I've been going through this process, first, I was actually running against a 27-year incumbent. And our messaging was talking about, hey, thanks for your service. It's time to transition, right? Because not only in that 27 years have things changed a lot for the city of Renton, but the city of Renton is now, it's majority BIPOC. And we have to have that representation on the council. And so we came out killing it from a fundraiser perspective, really resonating with voters. And he bowed out, family issue, and endorsed another Black guy to run against me, literally. And that's what supremacy actually does, right? And gatekeeping does. When they want things to stay status quo, when they want to hold power, it'll even come up in the place where somebody looks just like you to run against you, right?
Well, you talked about SNCC and you talked about, that goes right back to the civil rights. We've seen this tactic play out in our history. It is not new. And unfortunately, sometimes the age-old tactics of what they thought worked is what they try to bring back. And this really brings us into real tokenism. Sometimes I hate to just be honest, but it is what it is. How have you been dealing with this? And now how is it playing out for your race?
So one of the main things is I've been doorbelling like crazy. I've almost done like 6,500 doors. And in that whole process, as I'm doorbelling, I'm telling them the differences between us. Because one of the things that one of the tactics that they've deployed is, hey, there's 2 black men, so obviously they think alike. And he'll be very moderate when he walks up to the doors, right? But he's a straight up conservative. He has been endorsed by the GOP. He has Republicans running this campaign. And so I've just been trying to show them the differences between us, right? Because, you know, it's a tactic that is very effective. When you put 2 people up against each other and say, oh, well, they're both. Even so, I was actually at a discussion. We were having a community forum at the Renton Chamber, and one of the Renton council members actually put this guy up to this. I heard actually talking to some community members and saying, well, you know, they're both black men. I'm like, wow. I mean, they're deploying this 100%, trying to confuse people.
Well, this is where I think so much of what you just described earlier is about the education for Renton voters. I mean, for the citizens of Renton to understand that there is a real difference in lived experience and how that's going to play out at the council level. And honestly, I think that this is, I mean, just for people to understand that that's what transpired, right? You were killing it. Fundraising, you were, you know, it was clear that there was a real difference in approach and strategy that was coming from you and the incumbent. And then for the incumbent to say, okay, well, we're gonna do it this way because we got to hold on to these status quos. How much of it, in terms of the campaign trail, are you able to really educate voters? Because I think that people have to understand not just the difference between you and this the candidate now that's running up against you, but the tactics that play out in terms of keeping not just conservatism, but I'll say white supremacy culture, honestly, alive and well.
So one of the big ways we've been doing that is being on platforms like this, to be able to have the discussion and have folks really listen and understand that these tactics are being deployed. The other way, we've been at the doors, having these conversations, talking about, hey, this tactic got deployed, but that's not going to slow us down, right? Because we have a progressive agenda that is really for all community members, right? But we really are focusing on those marginalized and vulnerable community members. And then as we were having these conversations, I've just seen the light turn on for people. For instance, yesterday I was at a door describing myself, talking about me. And one of the things that popped up is like, she's like, oh my God, I didn't realize that they deployed this strategy to try to confuse us. And she was like, you 100% have my vote, Joe. And so those are the things that we've been doing to really show the differences. But, you know, it's hard. I can, even as I've been out on the campaign trail, just as a black man, I've been spit at. Even on one door, a guy came out with a gun. He was open carrying, and literally wanted to have a conversation with me about affirmative action and why that stopped him from becoming a police officer and for the city of Renton. So it's craziness that we see, especially in having Carmen actually doorbelling with me, as we having these conversations, right? We have seen some ugliness out there. But then on the flip side, we've seen some amazing people that want change for the city. And that's what we're here for. I'm here for it all, right? I knew this wasn't going to be easy. And so, and that's why I'm really pushing. That's why I'm knocking on these doors. That's why I'm having conversations, because the Renton community needs someone that can change the direction that we're going and make sure that it's a equitable community for everybody. And so that's why I'm here. I'm here for it all.
You know what? I think that, you know, part of your message, I think, is so clear, because it's not, no matter what the focus may be, it's actually, when you look at data and statistics, I deal with this, you know, in my job over at King County Equity Now. I've dealt with this with Africatown, the organizations that I'm connected to, is that when you actually focus on equity and eliminating this anti-Blackness and this racism, when you actually focus on Black equity, everybody else prospers, right? It's Absolutely. Not, it's so this misnomer that, you know, the focus on, you know, marginalized communities, or really, I always love to say communities from the global majority, non-white communities, does not mean that white folks don't benefit from it.
Absolutely.
So part of it is really understanding that piece of it. And when you're at a conservative door, getting them to understand, even though I may be progressive in my approach, understand how it's going to benefit you. Because I think sometimes when you can take it down to an individual level of how these policies and approaches are going to benefit them, it's not coming for them. It's actually raising our human nature as a whole. That to me is a great way to go about it. So I love hearing that you're door knocking and that you're really working to educate people on an individual level. When you talk about your relationship with Carmen, I want to ask you, because I'm always, you know, connecting things back to a relational approach and not transactional. How have you been able to build relationships now that people can understand that you're going to bring a different approach? You know, maybe there's organizations that have endorsed you. Maybe there's other people that have said, man, this is the breath of fresh air we needed. And I really want to be able to hear more about that, because I think it's so key when you are talking about specifically the times we're in right now. I think after COVID, a lot of things really hit the fan, and we learned, oh my gosh, we got a lot of work to do. And we need people like you and Carmen that are digging into that. How is it to be, you know, being able to receive that amazing energy and build relationships with folks who understand the need for your approach?
So one of the key things that has been really good for the campaign is those folks that have endorsed us. We've been endorsed by MLK Labor. We've been endorsed by the carpenters, the steel workers, right? IAM, all these different organizations that know that I'm the labor candidate, that I want a livable wage for folks, right? And then we've been endorsed by like state legislators, Tawana Nobles, Jesse Johnson, David Hackney, Tana Sin. I mean, these folks who have looked at my platform and have had conversations with me that know that I'm actually trying to change things. And then one of the big pluses for me, I'm a proud Democrat. And so King County Democrats, King County Young Democrats, Renton sits on 5 legislative districts, and all of the 5 Democratic legislative districts all endorsed me. I am the candidate that is about progressive change. And there's some things that we can really do around homelessness, housing affordability, and public safety. One of the things that has been pushed at us is about defining the police, right? And it's never come out of my mouth to say defund the police. But how come every time we try to have a conversation about the police, it's either black or white, right? We can reimagine the police. We can have conversations about reform, because across this country, people weren't protesting for it to stay the same. They were protesting to see some changes. And one of the big things for me is police need to be accountable to the communities that they serve. If you can't be accountable to the community that you serve, then don't be a police officer. Right? One of the things that Carmen talked about in a forum that we did, she was talking about having police officers that come from our community. And one of the tropes that tries to be deployed is, well, you know, if I live in the community and I might have to arrest a community member, I don't want to live in that same community. It's like, what are you talking about? In fact, living in the community and knowing that you might have to arrest someone might have you say like, well, you know what? That's Joe's son. I'm gonna put him back in his squad car. I'm gonna go take him to Joe's house and have a conversation and say, hey, he was acting up, right? Versus I'm gonna put him into the justice system and ruin his life, right? And so those are the types of things that community policing really work. And so those are things I'm really pushing for, engaging for.
I love that you say that. I mean, people have heard me say before that I think as police officers deepen their relationship with community members, there's a lot that can change. And maybe we don't have something that says that this is the way it's always been. But I love when we use the term reimagine, because that's really what we're talking about here. And for me, I have said this many times, you know, Detective Cookie in the Seattle Police Department is one who I think really exemplifies being a part and parcel of the community that she is there to protect and serve for. And it's being an example of what we can do. But I also think when I hear other folks that have been candidates, or other folks that are really experts in the space, of understanding that we also have to dismantle the notion of, there being a fee for locking our people up. You know, the idea is that it has been monetized, that prisons have been privatized in a way that creates financial incentives for officers to do that kind of work and police in that regard. I think it's like this whole top-down approach that has it being like, well, I have to write this amount of tickets. Right. I have a quota I have to meet. I have to lock this many people up in this time frame. Otherwise, like, I don't get promoted, or otherwise they look at me this way. So there's a lot there that I think we can really reimagine together. Joe Todd, man, I just appreciate you coming on today. I want to make sure we give time for you to tell the people out there, specifically those Renton voters, how they can connect with you, your campaign, how they can support you, and also build relationship with you right there. Let them know how they can contact you.
So you can contact me at www.votejoetodd.com. My email address is hello@votejoetodd.com. We really need you to come out and vote. One of the big things that happens on these off-year elections is Democrats don't come out. You've got to come out. Local elections matter. That's where all the stuff, where the rubber really meets the road, is at local elections. Folks come out for a president. They think that one person is going to lead us to the promised land. It takes a whole legislative body at the federal, state, and local level. And the local levels where the rubber really meets the road. So come out and vote for true progressives that are trying to move the city of Renton forward. www.votejoetodd.com. Email address hello@votejoetodd.com.
Joe Todd, man, a voice for the progressives out there in Renton. And again, kudos to you for stepping out. I understand that you are already dealing with different things. You talked about that being spit on, somebody bringing their gun. All of those things really is something that you have to take back home to your family. And I just want to tell you now that, for me, I'm sending you all the positive vibes and energy along the rest of this campaign. This is the last legs of it right here. And I really think that, it takes people to champion these issues, to step out in the forefront, and to be the leaders of these issues and approaches and new strategies for us to really see, equity. For me, it's always an equity lens. So thank you so much for putting yourself out there for the city of Renton. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you for this platform.
Absolutely. You guys, clearly the feel-good vibes are alive and well up here in the studio today with Joseph Todd, running for city council out there in Renton. And I just got to say, for any of you Renton voters that are a little bit on the fence, or maybe you got confused by his, opponent, another Black man who may come to your door with a moderate approach, I want to make it very clear that Joseph has said it today, that he is here to be your progressive candidate. And, honestly, there was a specific tactic that was played out here to put somebody who looks like him as his opponent. Let's not be fooled by these tactics. Let's educate ourselves. There's so many different resources out there where you can learn more and be educated about some of these tactics that do play out and have played out throughout our history to keep status quos alive. I'm all for, understanding the new ways that we can reimagine how our cities are being wielded, how power is being shared by the people, and how the people's voices are at the center of the approaches that we take at city, federal, and local levels. I think it's so important that we find ways to make sure that you, the voters, are being heard. So as Joseph said, make sure you get yourself out there to the polls. You guys got to make sure that ballot is in the box the Friday before. That is this Friday. That is literally this week. So if you guys are still on the fence, get educated. Make sure that you are voting in this local election. All of these candidates need your voices to be heard, no matter what side of the fence you're sitting on. It only matters if you participate. Thanks so much for watching.